So, how did you do? How do you think? Well, if we look at it from the aspects that the speaking examiner would look at it from, looking at fluency, he does a pretty good job. He's pretty good. He gives answers to his questions, that's for sure. But they could be more. They could be fuller. Yeah, his answers are. Although he talks a lot, he doesn't actually expand much on the subjects. Look at the first question he's asked about why reading is popular. He doesn't really give many reasons why it's popular. Um, and he also talks quite slowly. Lots of hesitation, looking for probably vocabulary or ideas, but he speaks at quite a slow rate. Um, I think what would have helped him would have been giving a few more reasons or examples of his related to his own experience or what he knows about happening in his country or internationally or just what he knows about the topic. Secondly, looking at cohesion and coherence, the way the ideas are organized. Um, he he does okay. Again, he does okay with that. He overuses so quite a bit, and he also has a problem. He says on the other side as opposed to on the other hand, um, which is an error. In order to get a six, you're showing you can use some linking words, um, but there are going to be some mistakes. He also uses but and because, which is good. Um, there's quite a lot of repetition, which signals that he's not using pronouns like it, they, and there's not great use of paraphrase, or that will come more in the vocabulary section. So if I were him, to improve that score, I'd try and use a few more linking words and use them more accurately. That would be the main point, and to try and use so, but you use it a little bit less. Use some other words as well. For example, as a result, then, that kind of thing. Look at his vocabulary. His vocabulary is probably his strong point. His strong point. Um, he'd be verging on a seven, I think, for vocabulary. He has a good range. He talks about necessity, facilities. He also talks about top managers, middle managers. So he obviously has some kind of business background. So he has a good range of vocabulary, as far as I'm concerned. There, um, although in one area, I feel he could have shown more vocabulary, talking about again things like reading and hobbies. Um, he showed more vocabulary talking about work-life balance than the hobbies. Um, he didn't really use any unusual or less common vocabulary. Um, and some of the vocabulary is a little bit inappropriate. Uh, but in order for him to get the higher score, a little bit more range would have been good. But he does show that he can talk about topics that aren't so familiar to him, and can do quite well with the vocabulary. He also had some good collocations. For example, he talks about working long hours. He talks about, just read my notes here. Um, uh, yes, I mentioned before, he talks about top managers, middle managers. Although he does also use the phrase in recent times, which is quite good, but he does use it two or three times. Better say recently, nowadays, these days. So there's a bit of overuse, a bit of repetition there. Um, looking at his grammar doesn't show a huge range. If we look at tenses, he I think uses the present tense throughout the whole discussion. Towards the end, I think he throws in one will, but there's no proof, no evidence of any ability to use any other tenses. Past simple, present perfect, it's all present simple. Um, he does use a range of structures. He does use subordinate clauses linked by words such as but, or coordinating clauses, that is. And he uses because, which is which link into different kind of grammatical structures. Uh, he makes some mistakes. He talks about, for example, more cheap food instead of cheaper food. He talks about few entertainments. So his grammar, there are a few issues there. He also doesn't use the passive when he could have done. Uh, and Yeah, so if I were him, I'd try to use, I'd study a little bit more about my tenses, a little bit about the passive, and that would help him quite a bit, particularly the tenses. I think many examiners, it's an easy thing to listen out for examiners. Can this student use past tenses? Can they use present perfect, or is it what tenses is the student using? Uh, and then finally, looking at pronunciation, he was generally clear throughout the his talk. Um, uh, a few words were difficult for me to understand right at the beginning when he talks about gardening. Yes, it's gardening. That I didn't catch. I had to kind of put that together. Then he talks about more cheap food, so I could kind of work out, oh, he was talking about gardening, but it was not so clear to me. Um, uh, his his intonation, excuse me, his intonation is fine, although he talks quite monotonously, quite at a flat tone. Excuse me. Um, what would help him is more use of stress in his sentence stress. So, for example, talking about reading, reading is quite popular in my country. Um, that would help him. I often tell students to show more enthusiasm when they speak. Excuse me. Um, so my dinner. um, show a bit more enthusiasm when they speak, because if you show enthusiasm as you speak, as a result of that, your intonation and your stress should change. And it's just an easy way of trying to show some range in of pronunciation when you speak. Um, uh, so at some points there is some lack of clarity when he speaks, but generally he can be understood throughout. Although he doesn't show a huge range of features. Again, as I said, intonation and pronunciation are key things to work on for him. So his overall score, according to YouTube and the official University of Cambridge, which is where the video comes from, was a band 6. And it's a good example of one. He's okay. He could be better. But generally his English is quite good. And I think I've pointed out what he could have done to improve. So why don't you have a go at answering those questions again, the same questions he answered. Um, and see if you can improve on your answers. Again, just to repeat the questions, what hobbies are popular in your country at the moment? What about the future? What hobbies do you think people will have in the future? Um, and let's talk about work-life balance. Can you tell me about the work-life balance in your country? Do you think this will change in the future? Why? Why not? Okay. So looking at those questions, I think a good opportunity, particularly talking about what's popular now, is using, for example, present tense, present perfect to say how long things have been popular. Um, Again, a good opportunity to just throw vocabulary out there, listing the kind of activities that are popular in your country. Looking at the future, your opportunity there to use future tenses, maybe some conditionals. Um, First conditional, if blah 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 will. Yeah, I don't want to give you ideas, so I'll just get the grammar. And work-leisure balance. Good opportunity there to use comparative structures. People work more. Uh, they have less free time. Also, an opportunity there to use phrases such as used to. We used to have more free time, for example. And again, do you think this will change in the future? Again, looking for future tenses, possibilities, so modal verbs, could, might, should, and again, conditionals again. Okay, so I'd try using those if I were you. So I hope this has been useful for you. Some suggestions there looking at band 3, sorry, band 6 score. And yeah, good luck to you. I hope it's helpful for you. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, one pointer. If you're watching this video just for practice before class, I think it might be useful at the beginning, before the recording, is to actually record yourself answering the questions using a smartphone if you can, and then listening to your answer afterwards and seeing and thinking about how well you think you answered those questions, and then answering them again, this time a little bit better. Thank you very much.